just going to speak about my journey and what I've been going through over the last 8 or 9 years, and talk about some of the things that have helped me, like Nurse Beth did. Like she said, you know, these things don't work for everybody, and I'm just really going to talk a little bit about my experience and the things that have been hard for me and the things that have been helpful to me. It was almost 9 years ago to the day today that I began feeling some tingling in my left foot. I was at a museum in London, having just attended the wedding of a terrific employee who had been with our company for almost 10 years. When we got home, I was very aware of the sensations that I was feeling, but being someone who was quite active athletically and had sustained various minor injuries from time to time, always recovering fully, with proper stretching, strengthening, and rest, I wanted to give this time before going to see my doctor. After about 6 weeks with symptoms not relenting and in fact increasing, I did go to see my doctor, who suggested that I go to an orthopedist to have some tests done. The MRI showed clearly that I had a condition known as spinal stenosis, a congenital condition whereby the narrowing of the spinal canal leads to pressure on nerve roots exiting the spinal canal. For me, the problem was at the L4 and L5 levels of the lumbar spine. I was beginning to feel pain in my lower back that was bad if I was standing, but as is classic with spinal stenosis, immediately stopped if I sat down. The recommendation was for me to partake in what are referred to as conservative treatments for the condition, such as physical therapy, chiropractic, and acupuncture, as opposed to more aggressive procedures like surgery. I pursued each of these conservative treatments for approximately 4 to 6 weeks each, with no positive result. Frustrated, I saw my doctor again, who recommended that I get an EMG of my left foot. This, he explained, would provide us with information regarding the speed and the strength of the nerve response at the L4 and L5 levels, and better inform us as to the need to proceed with a more aggressive treatment such as back surgery, known as a lumbar laminectomy. The neurologist who performed the EMG told me that based on the results of the test, I definitely needed surgery, and the longer I waited, the worse it would get, and the less likely it would be that I would have a full recovery. So scared by that information, I did proceed to get a second opinion quickly from a friend of mine who is a neurosurgeon. He corroborated that I should have the surgery, so I set it up for September 30th, 2009. That surgery was the beginning of my long journey, now just over 8 years, with CRPS. Though I do not have close to enough time to take you through each of my experiences on the 8-year path that has led me to today, I will try to both give you an overview and touch on some components of the journey that might be relevant to those of you, doctors, patients, relatives of patients, etc., who have some connections to CRPS. The journey has been one that has taken me many places that I would never have anticipated to go, many very difficult and painful, both physically and emotionally, many exhausting and debilitating, and others which were eye-opening and contributed to positive changes in my life. At one point in early 2011, after having worked for months doing hydrotherapy with a wonderful physical therapist at Greenwich Hospital named Gianna Hernandez, my insurance company informed me that they would not pay for any further coverage of this physical therapy. This, unfortunately, would become a common theme throughout my attempts to treat my CRPS, and is something which hopefully we all can work together to help influence the way insurance companies see this illness. Anyway, Gianna, who was a very spiritual woman, told me that I was on a journey, and at the other end of the journey, I would find a very positive change in who I was. She assured me that I would still be Eric, but that this experience of dealing with constant chronic pain would lead to changes that would have a positive, beneficial effect on me. Though that was incredibly hard for me to believe at the time she said it, now, almost 7 years later, I know that she was right. As I said earlier, I used to be extremely active with sports, In the summer, I would regularly and fairly consistently ride 100 miles a week on my bicycle. I also played tennis once or twice a week. In the winter, I would go to spin class early in the morning, 3 to 4 times a week, and I would ski 15 to 20 days during the season. I also loved to hike, garden, play Frisbee with my kids, and dance. These activities, in addition to my work and my family, were a major part of my life. I not only enjoyed the physical activity, it was also a significant part of my social life and a huge stress reliever for me while trying to do my best to manage running a business and raising 3 children. So bottom line is, if you told me 10 years ago that I would not be able to do any of those activities anymore, I literally would have said that I would not want to live a life where that was the case. I simply would not have been able to imagine my life without sports and without being physically active in general. But I have been very fortunate in being able to adjust and adapt to a life where I am not able to partake in those activities. In addition to not being able to do those activities, my path has included twists and turns, many ups and downs, many adjustments to new realities, a new normal that have weighed heavily on me, my incredible wife, my 3 boys, my business partners, and many other good friends and family members. For the first 2.5 years, I did not know that I had CRPS. This is another one of the challenges that exist for many people who end up with this disease. It often goes undiagnosed, and in the interim, the illness continues to progress and becomes increasingly difficult to treat successfully. Since I had undergone surgery for spinal stenosis, almost all of the doctors that I went to see in the 2.5 years before my CRPS diagnosis thought that my problem was related to my back, particularly the L4, L5 nerve roots, which feed directly to the toes in my right foot that were being affected with pain. So I went from doctor to doctor, mostly neurologists, physiatrists, physical therapists, neurosurgeons, chiropractors, and acupuncturists, as well as my internist. I also saw a podiatrist, an infectious disease doctor, a Lyme specialist, always trying to uncover a reason for why I was having this burning, stinging, knife-like pain, predominantly in the second toe of my right foot, but also the first and third toes to a lesser degree. Frequently, many of the doctors would be hopeful that physical therapy or hydrotherapy or a selective nerve root block or a lumbar sympathetic block or a treatment of myofascial release would be helpful. In many cases, they were really confident that the treatment that they were suggesting would be the answer. So time after time, I would get very excited that maybe this was the doctor who, or the treatment that, would actually help me, that I could either be fully healed or at least that I might get some relief, that maybe I'd again be able to ski and cycle, to play tennis with my kids. I actually have had a number of doctors who love to ski, as I do, who have talked about us skiing together when I am healed. And that has always given me tremendous motivation. At first, when I would try a treatment and it did not help at all, I would be very resolute and ready to move on to the next thing. I had built up a list of potential treatments, and I would just move right on to the next one. Okay, that one didn't work, let's try something else. I was determined to solve this thing, to not let it get in the way of what I wanted to do in my life. But after 5 or 6 unsuccessful interventions, it began to get more difficult for me to stay positive. And after 10 to 15 of them, it became even more difficult. At times when a treatment would not work, I would break out crying. I could not believe that this was happening to me time after time. I would be very hopeful only to be disappointed once again. This was truly a roller coaster of emotions that was extremely difficult to deal with. Finally, in the summer of 2012, after having no success with any of these doctors or treatments, I decided after, and this again is before the CRPS diagnosis, I decided after seeing one of the top neurosurgeons in New York City, Dr. Patrick O'Leary at Hospital for Special Surgery, to have a spinal fusion at L4, L5, and S1. He felt that he could help me, and he told me the story of a patient who he said had similar symptoms to me and who within a month after her fusion had climbed up the steps to the top of the Empire State Building. So again, I was hopeful. But 3 to 4 months after the surgery, not only was there no relief, but in hindsight, knowing what I know now about CRPS, I believe that having surgery was not the best path for me to take. Had I realized I had CRPS at the time, I would have not had the surgery, because I think there's a good chance that the surgery just exacerbated the neurological disorder. Of course, that is another one of the challenging things about having a condition such as CRPS. So often the medical community really is not able to give good advice as to what are the best procedures and treatments to pursue. When I saw that the surgery had not been successful, and in fact my pain was continuing to increase and to spread to other toes in my right foot, I saw a pain management doctor named Russell Portnoy, who was heading up the pain management and palliative care unit at Beth Israel. He was the first one to tell me that I had CRPS, and he was certain that I had CRPS. When, after he completed his 2-hour-long physical examination, he told me that's what I had, I told him, "You seem very confident in that diagnosis." He told me that he was sure that that's what I had. When I said that I had done some reading and learning about the illness, and that I was aware that though I had many of the symptoms, I also did not have many of them, i.e., I did not have allodynia, I did not have hair loss, I did not have cracking of the nails or swelling of my foot. He told me that I do not have to have all of the symptoms to have the diagnosis. I had enough of them for him to be certain that I had the illness, including burning, stinging sensations, knife-like pain, clammy skin, and shiny skin. So I was then, a couple of months later, able to get in to see Dr. Robert Schwartzman, who somebody referred to earlier, one of the preeminent experts on CRPS. After he examined me, he also felt strongly that I had CRPS, and he recommended the procedure which I said here, but I learned during the presentation earlier, I said some role in pioneering, or certainly in performing a great deal of it, called ketamine infusion. I was scheduled for inpatient infusion in 2 weeks. I was so excited that A, we had figured out what I had, and B, I had an appointment with a top doctor in the field who was going to do a treatment that I heard had been very successful with many CRPS patients. Unfortunately, 2 days before I was going to head to Philadelphia, I got a call from Schwartzman's office that they had gotten the results of my blood work and that I would not be able to get the infusion because my LFTs were too high. Of course, I had no idea what they were talking about. I did not know what an LFT was. They explained that LFT stands for liver function test, and that since my levels were slightly elevated, but nonetheless above the baseline level, which the protocol for this procedure allowed at this particular hospital, I would need to take steps to reduce my liver function levels, get my blood retested, keep the levels low for 3 months, and then reschedule the infusion. Of course, there were many issues, challenges, and frustrations with this. First of all, Dr. Schwartzman was about to retire within the next couple of months, and thus would no longer be there to do the procedure if and when I got my LFT levels down. Second, when I asked them what to do with my diet to help reduce my liver function numbers, they responded, "We have no idea. You need to speak with your doctor." This was not what I wanted to hear, moments after they had told me my procedure was canceled. Sometimes in this process, it has been incredible how insensitive medical professionals could be to their patients. At this point, I was truly devastated. I was actually heading into New York City with my wife on the train, and I was crying uncontrollably. I could not take the pain, and I really felt as though I was cracking, that I no longer had the strength to keep going to deal with this. But ultimately, I knew I had no choice. I needed to keep engaged with my work and my family, to keep engaged with my friendships and other interests, because if I did not, I would simply get depressed and everything, including the neurological symptoms, would get worse. It's been clear to me that when I feel stress, my CRPS just spikes right up. It's unbelievable. I can just feel it. I really called on some of the cognitive behavioral therapy training that I had gotten previously, trying to use my mind to control my brain, using a thought record to disprove negative thoughts, working hard with my mind to stop the catastrophizing where the fear of the unknown was what was really shaking me up and not really helping, just making it worse. CBT, as cognitive behavioral therapy is most commonly referred to, has had a huge positive benefit for me, allowing me to appreciate the blessings I have in my life, to look at the glass as half full as opposed to half empty. I also became very fond of a statement that I once read that a priest named Charles Swindoll wrote, and that is called Attitude. He wrote, "The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than facts. It is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures or successes, than what other people think or say or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, a home. The remarkable thing is, we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is plan on the one thing we have, and that is our attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes." Now, I don't even remember where I first saw this, but it just had a huge effect on me, and it's something that I've turned to and read whenever I'm feeling really bad and feeling ready to give up. I read this, and I know that at the end of the day, it's up to me to figure out how to make this work. Nobody else is going to do it for me. It's totally up to me. So to continue on with my story, I ultimately was able to get ketamine infusion with a doctor in New York, but the procedure had to be stopped when I had some type of allergic reaction to the treatment. I have since done ketamine treatment orally, but that also was not successful. Since that time, a few years ago, I have continued to try many other types of treatment. First and foremost, I focused for a number of years on pain management, going to see a number of different doctors at some of the better hospitals in New York City. They have given me many different medications to try, none of which have really worked. They had me try a spinal cord stimulator. They had me try transcranial direct current stimulation. I have tried medical marijuana. All in all, I've been to see almost 50 doctors and healthcare practitioners over the last years, including but not limited to 4 neurologists, 4 physical therapists, 5 neurosurgeons, 5 chiropractors, 5 internists, 4 acupuncturists, 5 pain management specialists, 2 sports management docs, 1 podiatrist, 1 vascular doctor, 1 infectious disease specialist, 1 cardiologist, 2 physiatrists, I hope I'm not boring you to death, 2 Lyme disease experts, 1 healer, 1 peripheral nerve surgeon, 2 medical intuitives, and last but certainly not least, my osteopath, Dr. Barry Erner, who's here today in the first row, who has been my main ally on the path that I have been traveling over the last few years of this illness. As part of seeing all these experts, I've tried procedures like selective nerve root blocks at L4, L5, and S1, and lumbar sympathetic blocks at the same levels. I've had many EMGs on my hands and my feet, as well as countless MRIs of upper spine, lower spine, brain, you name it. I've had a myelogram, and I've done a spinal cord stimulator trial. I've tried ketamine infusions and lidocaine infusions. I've used lidocaine patches on my foot. I've adjusted my thinking to try and be open to many alternative treatments, allowing for Eastern as well as Western techniques for healing. These treatments have included cryotherapy, ozone therapy, hyperbaric chamber, Kalmar machine, myofascial release, biofeedback, transcranial direct current stimulation, neuroplastic transformation, and hypnosis, as well as personal instruction in yoga and Pilates. I've tried not to leave any stone unturned. After most of these procedures had been performed without any success in relief of my symptoms, I spent a week at Mayo Clinic in Minnesota for a complete, extremely thorough workup. They talked a lot about central sensitization, but at the end of the week, the only real recommendation that they had for me that I hadn't already tried was to participate in their month-long program for patients who are all experiencing chronic pain. I enrolled in that program and did spend a month there. I saw how many people experience chronic pain, and I saw many people do have breakthroughs there. Chronic pain can be a debilitating, exhausting illness, one that can be so frustrating to try and solve because very often you feel alone, like no one understands or can really have any sense of what you are experiencing. That program at Mayo Clinic did give me hope because I saw people who were getting success from it. I also would like to show you a photo that an associate of mine sent me a couple of years ago. He's always been a fan of mine, and when I would tell him what a struggle I was having, he would tell me that I have a lot to offer and that I just need to commit to continuing to fight. And he sent me this photo. I don't know whether any of you can see it, but it's basically a frog that's in the mouth of a bird's beak, and it says, "Don't ever, ever give up." So I have this on the desk, my desk at my office, and whenever I'm having a bad day, if I'm not reading the attitude quote, I'm looking at this. And it does help me. I mean, there are times where I just feel like I want to give up, and I look at that and I say, I can't do it because Dave Henry, who gave it to me, would be really upset with me if I did. So much of what I've touched on here has been the challenges that CRPS has put into my life. But I've actually been very fortunate to feel, as Gianna Hernandez had predicted, that there has also been a blessing in this illness for me. I used to be someone who always felt like the bar was here and I was often just a bit below it. Whether it was as a father, as the boss of our company, as a husband, or as an athlete, I frequently felt like I was not living up to my potential, or even I was failing. But since I've had this illness, I've had a huge transformation in my thinking, where I am much more comfortable with who I am. I know that I have plenty of flaws and cannot always accomplish what I want to each day, but somehow this condition has helped me put life in a better perspective. It has made me realize that you cannot take things for granted, that each day is truly a blessing. Who would have known that I would be in excruciating pain every minute of every day of my life? Who would have known that I would not be able to dance, to ski, to ride a bike? Who would have known that I would need a scooter to get around? But I still nonetheless have so many people and good things in my life that make it so worth fighting for. It actually helps me to think about all the people all over the world who have bombs going off, who are dying of hunger, who are raped or tortured, and it helps me put my situation, as difficult and challenging as it is, in perspective. Another of the hopeful things about this organization and what we've seen here today is that there are many things happening in this field. People are working on things, doing research, and trying new therapies. And hopefully, as time goes by, there will be more progress, and technology can help us to find solutions. In addition, as we see here today, there are many people who have a relationship to this illness in one way or another, who we can share our experiences with. That in itself is very important, as one of the challenges is always feeling alone, feeling that no one else understands what we are going through. So in spite of the enormous challenges that all of us who have this illness face, I feel strongly that there is reason for hope, that we can all live productive, meaningful lives, and that in addition, there may be some relief in the future.